Keeping up with AI news is one of the hardest things you can do. So here I am at my attempt trying to cut through the bullshit and give you the key things that I remember and that are important from the week in AI. So what we've got is code red was the big word all around every video. So Gemini 3.0 Pro came out and then OpenAI started panicking. Why did they start panicking? Well, that model just started dominating everything. The image generation was amazing. The quality of outputs from them coding models is amazing. The general chat was very good quality as well. So then OpenAI apparently issued out, or Sam Altman specifically issued out a code red alert in the company so that everyone can stop focusing on all the side projects like putting ads into the freaking feed, which no one wants, and some other shit that they've cut off, and have now focused back on making the ChatGPT core experience the best it can be. Best generation of video, so this is what their focus is. So OpenAI stock took a hit, Google stock took a bump because of that news, and it showed that Google's custom AI chips, the TPUs, the tensor processing units, can actually perform or potentially outperform NVIDIA's chips. So the AI chip race is definitely on, as well as the frontier model company race. And apparently there's a GPT 5.2 rumor or a new model called GPT, it's codenamed Garlic. Apparently there's a online odds market called Polymarket, which does freaking stats across everything and whatever you can think of. And there's odds on, and you can put bets on when the new frontier model will drop by OpenAI, who will have the best model on a certain benchmark by a certain date. And they think that GPT Garlic will be coming out within the next week or two before Christmas, I think, is the plan. But these things are just dropping like flies now. Like there's big model releases everywhere. There's no huge announcements, just here you go, today's a new model. And then the next day is the next one from another company. But it's gonna be interesting to try and keep up with all these model names because people do get these names, or it says unknown models in certain benchmarks and tests, and people don't know where they're coming from, what they're doing, or how they're operating. They just see the results and then start speculating. Apparently ChatGPT user growth is also slowing. 7 million new monthly users versus 40 to 60 in previous months. Which, not surprising considering when you have as many users as they have, they're going to be slowing down because they've gotten everyone already. So it's going to be a challenge. And then people are shifting to new platforms. They're not just using the same ones. So it will slow down. It's inevitable. Mistral, DevStral 2. So Mistral is a European organization focusing on open source models. They released an open source model with open source weights. So the training data and the weights and how it was calculated has been released. Apparently it does pretty good. Nothing amazing or nothing like outstanding or noteworthy really. Besides that, it's a solid model, it's open sourced, and I think it's on a lower parameter count, which is not trillions in billion, the billion number of parameters, which is how it's been trained and put together, number of neurons that it has. So they got 123 billion and 40 billion. One's MIT licensed, the other one's Apache 2. Can't remember the exact difference between them. Then they also released a CLI automation tool to help you run agents like Claude Code and Codex on your own computer. The heading I'm reading here is Multimodal Agentic Systems from Chat to Do. The big shift isn't smarter chat, it's models that can see, hear, and video and take actions as agents. So multimodal is the buzzword here that allows a user to put in text, video, images, audio into the UI and make it work all together at one. There was one of the videos, I don't know where it's going to come through in this summary, that I watched that discussed that in traditional multimodal systems, the text input takes a priority over the image input. So even if you are putting in image input, the text overrides what the image does and what it's determining. The tokens that are generated from the text that you provide have a higher priority within the model's reasoning and understanding. So that's something that's going to have to get solved, and now that at least they understand that problem, they can understand what to do with it and improve it. So that's something that they need to think about. So again, Gemini 3 is definitely multimodal. It's got to focus on that text, images, audio, video, so that it can be able to deliver across any facet and put all the information together at once. Which is interesting because this is how we'll end up getting better robots or smarter robots in the future that use these large language models that can use the audio, so it can use a microphone when we talk to it. It can use its own cameras to have vision and see things around the world. Eventually, multimodal will end up being data from sensors when it touches, and it can feel things. It should be able to identify either texture or electrical resistance to know whether it's conductive or not. Heat, things like that. So it's going to be another level of multimodal input into the models in the future. Definitely, because that's what the robots will be having. They'll need those sensors. Like, it's not going to be able to pour you a glass of hot or cold if it doesn't know what the difference is, just because the tap says that. Like, it needs to be able to measure these things. Like, they're going to be helping us do a lot of things, and that's definitely a step towards that direction. Then there was a new new open source organization apparently between OpenAI and Anthropic. Anthropic donated the MCP protocol to the organization, so that's now completely open source for everyone to use, so they can try and foster integration across all the providers by providing these open source tools. And then OpenAI donated agents.md, so they donated the structure of a file, which is how agents use those rules to guide what they do. So agents have to be able to communicate with different agents because everyone's going to have them. They're going to be built on different stacks using different technologies. And MCP is the way that communication is happening at the moment. The agent-to-agent protocol announced a few months ago by Google. Haven't heard too much on that for a while. So whether that's the way that goes, I'm not sure. But now this is pushing forwards in the Agentic AI Foundation is the nice term for that open source organization apparently. And Amazon debuted Nova 2, their own model. So Amazon's starting to make some waves in the actual AI front in model space, not just hosting things on Bedrock, but deploying their own models. Apparently it has text, image, video, audio, all in the one family, and also includes chain of thought style reasoning, which is what we're familiar with now from last year with the O series of models and just what ChatGPT Pro or Thinking does. Starts thinking and it's got its own reasoning through the actual feed of how it actually puts things together. Next one is memory and continual learning, the quiet breakthrough category. Everyone's hitting the same wall, context and forgetting. So memory architectures are becoming the battleground. If you're familiar with any of these tools and you've used them long enough, you do realize that you have to put enough information in them to get anything useful out. That is a limitation because there is a context length limit to all of the models. Once you put in too much, it overloads or it floods and it forgets what you put in at the start. Anthropic's 4.5 Opus, their newest release, has a system where it starts pruning its own memory to only keep the important things. You can also clear them. They started introducing cache into the model, so then you don't have to hit the model and can return things from cache. That also has a benefit where it's got a cheaper cost. So if you're doing a lot of repetitious things, then you will be able to hit the cache in your product or your program that you're developing and get that back. But there is a lot happening in the memory architecture so that key things are not lost and we can keep building that out. And then we're even building our own sort of systems on how to manage and interpret memory for the model so we can then look up things and have it accurate. Everything has been all about scaling, so we've been getting more and more compute, as they call it. So how many more graphics cards can you throw at the problem to make it do its thing? But then it's still the same problem. You can still run out of memory and lose context. There was a video about how to mitigate catastrophic failure. So we've just touched on that. You're talking about something, having a conversation, it's just completely forgotten what it said earlier. And it does have no memory of it because you've exceeded the token limit, and it's effectively a queue system. You fill up the queue with all the previous chat history. And then as you put in the new one, once you've exceeded the history, something at the start of the queue gets pushed off, so it loses that. My best example to explain that to someone is if you write the letter A, and then you write the letter B for the next 200,000 tokens. And when you ask what's the first letter I provided, it's going to say B because A was pushed off because it's the 200,001 token. So it doesn't work that way. So that's how they sort of work. The other thing is a lot of talk about if models can continually learn, which is not what they do at the moment. They're trained once and that's it. The continual learning is all about not reinforcement learning over periods, but them being able to, the memory helps with learning because it retains information that you've kept. So the way they're mitigating around the continual learning at the moment is having access to sort of web search tools, yeah? So that we can then get newer data in the model's context by allowing it to do search. But that's just a augmented version of the RAG system, the retrieval augmented generation, where you're using a tool called web search to go and search something off a website, get that content, bring it back in and pipe it into the actual chat context, not have it in its underlying training data set or in its inference memory in those parameters that we store. Efficiency breakthroughs, sparse attention, and hardware power plays. The next leap may be less about bigger models and more about cheaper or faster inference training. So DeepSeek released their model last week, I think it is. We touched on that. They had another moment where it's competing with GPT-5 and it's open source and it will cost less to train and it costs less to build. So that is a huge advantage. Then the inference, when everyone talks about inference, what they're talking about is the actual time it takes for the GPU or the AI chip to do its thing and find the word that it needs to find to answer you. You ask it a question, it runs all these calculations in a 3D vector space, which is like an XYZ coordinate. It finds your words, it finds all the similarly matching words, and then it starts saying, all right, you've said this, and now I'm going to pick that word. What is the next word based on the probabilities in this vector space that I've seen before that I should give you? And it does that. And it does that in parallel, millions of times in the second, and gives the answer back. So that's the inference where it's trying to infer an answer. That is where everything has been at the moment. And the idea is if they can reduce that cost And the time that happens, you'll get faster responses and it's cheaper to run. These things still cost a shitload of money to operate. So the idea is the long context needs to be affordable. That needs to be happening with the memory, as well as making it cheaper to actually have a conversation and store this huge amount of information in the system. Instead of attending to everything, it's trying to triage what matters first, and that's what's important. But you want it to have everything. You don't want to just find the most important things in the history. You want it to have a full memory of everything. And now Google has also started selling its tensor processing units, the TPUs, directly apparently to Anthropic. So now they are starting to eat NVIDIA's lunch, and we'll see how that sort of plays out in the markets and what they can do in the future. They're going to need their chips more than anyone else because that's their secret sauce. No one else has a frontier model company and a chip besides NVIDIA and potentially Grok or SpaceX, Tesla. I think they have their own AI chips, but in a video with Jensen Huang, I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast interview with Jensen Huang, he mentioned that they built the first chips for Tesla, FSD, for the full self-driving cars. So I'm not sure if they have their own, or I've just read that they're looking at building their own. So it's been interesting to see how that happens. And apparently there are solutions for data centers with a 42 megawatt natural gas turbine that's coming out of a startup, so then they can start replacing the power plants. Apparently it's really high output from a small footprint, and it offsets the coal and the normal energy infrastructure, so you could deploy this right at data centers. Apparently it's got huge orders from Anthropic so after it was announced, so then they can start getting more energy, because energy is the key. That's the key to everything. As more energy we use as a society, have to decide where we're putting that energy. Is it going to be used for consumers? Is it going to be used for business? Is it these AI companies? And what benefit does that provide to everyone? And then we have AI in the real world. Now this one I'm going to have to read because it's a lot of statistics. So apparently Anthropic, they did a study of 1,250 professionals across different countries, and the main headline was 86% of those 1,250 people reported time savings with a 65% satisfaction rate. The nuance in the story was that people want to delegate the boring stuff while protecting the core of their professional identity. So as long as your work, your professional identity, is not the task that you need to do, you still have a core work that you can work on, which means you won't be completely replaced. When your job is solely the task that is done and you don't do anything else, then you are a candidate for replacement by AI. So if your job is to process certain data or copy and paste things or transcribe things, like that is all you do, you will get replaced by AI. The task will get replaced. Also, it's scientists and people want AI that's a collaborator, not just a summarizer, someone that can work with them side by side to actually do the work, not just summarize what they're doing. You need someone that's going to be able to think and move forward and give you ideas and challenge what you're thinking so you can get a better outcome. And then there's also a PR problem, apparently, that came out of this survey, where there is higher rejection of AI in the developed markets, US, UK, Germany, compared to more enthusiasm in lower developed markets that the non-Western world, such as China, Brazil, which is strange. The people that don't have these jobs in offices see more benefit in the AI. The ones that don't like it are the ones that probably are more at risk and more at threat of having their jobs taken. And that's why there's a bad perception on AI in these Western world and the developed market, because the rhetoric for the past year has been AI is taking our jobs. And as I mentioned, if your job is a task, that is something that will happen, where these other people are doing physical jobs. So the AI is not going to take their job. They're not at risk of losing their work, so they're more confident having AI help them in the new world because they haven't been experienced any of that yet. And then we have, I think this is the last one, governance and regulation, federal patchwork and why it matters for startups. So quite a lot of videos I watched this week as well also talked about regulation in the US. That seems to be the driving market for everything that's happening in the moment. And that's about federal regulation versus state regulation. The federal government, so Trump, the presidency, the White House, wants to have a federal regulation over AI. And I think he's mentioned in the past that they will start denying funding if states start regulating AI themselves. The reason for this is having 52 different states, 52 different rules on how AI should be implemented. It will cause chaos and stifle innovation and slow down companies to have to innovate across the rest of the country and slow them down compared to places like China, where there is one regulation, there's nothing else. Everyone gets behind them, they all move forward with it. The example I followed was the car industry. California specified that different emissions policies for cars that had to be met, and then car companies started making cars for California and then the rest of the country. Then eventually they just replaced the rest of the country with what they were doing in California, because that was the biggest market in the US for cars. And that sort of effectively allowed the California to dictate what was happening across the entire country. This will definitely slow things down in markets with AI if they all have to abide by these things. But these things are not state issues, they are global issues effectively. Like OpenAI is a global company now. it was after the first week, once it reached its 100 million users. Having the different states is going to cause shitloads of problems, chaos, headache everywhere. So it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of mention that and how they manage that, but not my problem, above my pay grade really. I think, yeah, that's where we'll go. So next week, we'll just keep an eye on this code red, see whether that new OpenAI model has been released, which is coming out, whether it's garlic or whatever other code name they use. So much secrecy and random words on these things. It's funny. Like, there was an unknown model as well coming out of Grok, which was Grok 420 testing, because Elon Musk loves that sort of shit. And apparently it won the stock market trading game, but it was called unknown model. Everyone thought it was one thing, but it ended up being Grok. Elon Musk confirmed. So like, these names and code words are, everyone's trying to protect themselves and hide what they're doing. No one wants everyone to know what they're up to. And then we'll see if any of these memory or continual learning things start making it more into products, or if there's more talk about how Anthropic is doing the memory and context management, because that's a key thing to really making any of these things work moving forward in the future. As usual, good luck keeping up with the AI news until next week.